also an obsession where you can like get into a perfectionist thing where it's got to work just right, but it really doesn't necessarily need to. So, and this is the thing that gets me all the time is building tools out before I've actually tried to build more than one thing and then find out what I actually need for the tooling. So like build all these tools and then I build one thing and then I found out what I actually need is a different tool.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. I, of course, am your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby, who's over there giving me the eye for some reason. We already had treat time, but maybe it was not enough treat time. Pumpkin's doing something. And, of course, every week we try to bring on a special guest. This week's guest, Caleb Eno. You've been on the show before. How you doing, Caleb?
Doing all right this morning. How you doing, Chris?
Good. Caleb, you're a game developer, you're a tech lead, you are a instrumental part of the local game dev community here, long-time GDEXer, GDEX volunteer lead. So,
this is year 12, right? Yeah, I think. No.
This is year 13 of GDEX. And I think it's year 12.
Did I say 12 or 11? Because my first time volunteering would have been in 2015. So I guess it's 11.
Okay.
My 11th one.
Yeah, because 13 was the first one we did. And this is year lucky 13. Very exciting. We're also 90 days out. We'll talk about that in a second. But welcome back to the show. I think since the last time you were on the show, you have had a new little one. Am I correct in that?
Gosh, has it been that long? I mean, the new little one is over a year old now.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been on the show.
It's entirely possible. Yeah, no. Yeah, little one is doing well. She's a lot of fun. So number 3. So
exciting times. So yeah, I guess let's do a little, before we get too crazy here, let's do a little kind of housekeeping. So real fast, Sony is doing a state of play today. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern. I think we're going to host a watch party at 5 p.m. on this channel. So if people are interested, we'll spread the word and let folks know. But I think it'd be fun and cool to watch a little E3 state of play and be able to talk about it. So I'll be hitting up stuff. Caleb, if you're available at 5 and you want to jump on Discord and we can watch it together, you're welcome to do it. I know you've got family responsibilities at the end of the day, but then we have got COG, thecog.com.
Thecog.com.
Yeah, if you are
the COGG.
Yeah, COGG. We've got the website here. There's me and my little dog. Caleb, you're on here. We got a whole bunch of familiar faces.
Gosh, so
Tom.
that is a picture from the biggest global game jam that we ever hosted. I think we had 70 something people there. And that was either 2018 or 2019. It was our biggest one that we ever had right before COVID hit and everything, went downhill. Yeah. But that was an awesome year. There were so many people, so many good games. It's a little bit dated now as a picture, but there's a lot of those folks still obviously around and part of our community and stuff. So yeah.
There's a lot of familiar faces in here that are still at the community that still are a part of GDEX and whatnot. So it looks like Katie's dabbing. It appears. I
think it's Katie and Cody are both dabbing.
Oh, yep. There you go. Nice. So anyway, feel free to join the COG. You can go and join the Discord, the meetup groups. It is the Central Ohio Gamedev Group, but it is open to everybody. And there is a combination between online and in-person events. So if you want to get connected to other game developers, I mean, COG has a host of people. I think one of the cool things about COG and GDEX here, let me turn this off for a second, is that there is a wide variety of, from students that are like fresh into school to hobbyists that are maybe kind of doing games on the side to people that have been in the industry for 20, 25 years and have worked on, Marcus was on the show maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. He's got like almost 40 AAA credits under his belt. Jason Conaway has been working on the AAA space for a long time. George Zeitz. So a lot of folks in there. But anyway, all are welcome to be a part of COG. And then, of course, the big daddy, GDEX 2025 and our partner CorksCon. We are at the 90-day mark. So I'm going to be updating this website either today or tomorrow with some new information, trying to get some speakers and exhibitors and stuff up on there. But we are still taking volunteers. We're still taking speaking sessions, and we still have some exhibitor spaces left. So we're going to be September 4th. I should probably put that on here. September 4th through the 7th. In beautiful Columbus, Ohio. It should be a lovely weekend. Passes are currently on sale for their early discount until June 30th, which is my sister's birthday. My birthday is June 29th. And additionally, we have I should probably put that on there too. We have a raffle where if you buy your tickets before the end of June, you get entered into a raffle to win a Nintendo Switch 2, which is coming out in 2 days, I think here. And then of note, if you buy the GDEX Plus or the GDEX Plus Pro, so the Plus is kind of like our VIP. We don't really use the VIP nomenclature, but that's our VIP one. Your pass will count as 3 entries into the raffle. So just something worth keeping an eye on. Again, that's until the end of June here.
So, Chris, 90 days out, how are those heart palpitations doing?
Oh, dude, I am freaked out. Like, it is. So every year we kind of get to this mark and we're just like, oh my God, it's going to be stressful. But what's going on in the economy, what is going on with things like tariffs and the layoffs in the tech, like it is noticeably impacting what we're doing. For example, we have a ton of commitments for sponsorship, but very few people have paid. And at the 90-day mark, that's pretty problematic because, I got to pay for the deposit for the convention center. We got to start paying for promotion. We got to start buying like hotels and flights for people. And there's just a lot of expenses that come in these 90 days. And a lot of people are worried. So we have reduced a lot of our prices this year on practically everything, our tickets, our exhibitors, because we wanted to try to, help with what's going on with the economy and everything. If you are interested in reducing my stress level, if that is a priority to you, please buy your tickets and send your sponsorships. It would make my life significantly easier. Or if you're independently wealthy and you just want to give me a bunch of money, that works too.
Hey.
And then lastly here, this is kind of interesting. Let me pull this off. So some of you know this. Others, this might be new to you, but I am now, as of yesterday at like 6:00 in the evening, I am now an official candidate running for U.S. Senate in Ohio in the 2026 special election. So I just wanted to sort of show this. I have started thank you, a little slow clap there. I have started a Twitch channel. So all of my stuff, we currently have Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitch. Will probably be rolling out maybe like a TikTok, YouTube. It's all Volpe for America, one word, VOLPE. So I have started, you can see it here, a playthrough. I'm actually kind of restarting it, but I'm doing a playthrough of Fallout 4 over Twitch where people can come while I'm playing and just ask questions, talk about whatever. It's just a place for folks to come and engage kind of about politics and about what's going on in the world without it being this like super formal thing, and just kind of creating a respectful, chill place to come and talk and ask questions and just say what's on your mind, right? So a lot of it has been about people just asking me questions, but also some of it has just been people talking about what's on their mind, what they're thinking about. And so, I will be, releasing more information, but if you want to follow me at any of the social medias at Volpe for America, I am now in the ring. I am the first, as of last night. I'm not aware of any others. I am the first Democratic candidate to be running in Ohio. So I'm the first one into the ring here. Yeah. So again,
It's really interesting about your Twitch channel there, Chris. I feel
yeah.
like that this is a new wave of things that I've seen more and more politicians doing. In fact, doing these sort of like, let's hang out, play games, stream. Who was it? Tim Walz and AOC did Crazy Taxi together, if I recall correctly.
They did Crazy Taxi, and I think AOC has maybe done Among Us with some friends.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Obviously, without going too far down the politics rabbit hole, I think a lot of us are feeling that Congress is, one, not doing what they should be doing and helping us out, the people, but two, the average age in Congress is like, what, 70 years old or something? Like it is not representative of us as a whole, as a people. And on top of that, and I'm trying not to be too ageist here, but you see some of these Senate hearings and stuff where they're talking to people that are, in charge of technology companies and stuff. And it's obvious they just do not understand the technology. And so like video games, I mean, AOC and like maybe a few others. Hi, Pumpkin. Know anything about games, right? But like most of these centers don't even have the beginnings of an inkling about games. And so I started thinking about it, and not just so much about understanding games and the games industry, which I do think is important since the games industry is a gigantic industry. It's also it's a tech-driven industry and a very creative industry. So I think it's important for us to understand it. And currently the US and Japan are the two leaders in this industry. But
Well,
also
it's the biggest dollar amount industry in the entertainment sector, right? Like,
oh, for sure. It is bigger than the music industry and the movie industry combined times 2.
yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
And
it's huge.
Yeah, it's larger than that. And we've got things like, GTA 6 is coming out next year, which is estimated to be about a $2 billion project, which will make it the largest entertainment product in human history ever. So yeah, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of economics. And also I think a lot of people don't realize the impact the games industry has on all of these other sectors. You want to take the over under on if Pumpkin's going to knock my camera over? It's looking pretty close here. But like, think about it. Like, in-app purchasing started with games, right? Real-time simulations, games. Almost every sort of advancement in the internet and, lag and latency reductions, real-time communications, like all of that was spearheaded in the games industry. And then of course you're looking at graphics, animation, all that stuff, CGI that's in movies. Like we are on the forefront of all of this stuff.
Well, I mean, Unreal Engine is one of the premier tools in movie-based CGI, right? I mean, like the literal game engine.
Yeah, hey, baby. The Unreal Engine has become a pretty big part. They have a whole sector in their sort of internal studio that's devoted to helping movie studios and creating new tech for film and cinema. So, and then I was thinking about this, like before I even started, this was maybe 4 months ago when I was just kind of pondering starting this Senate thing. And I was like, I'm going to move this and hopefully the world doesn't fall apart on me. There we go. So I think Democrats, again, painting with a broad brush here, but sort of Democrats as a thing, I think has this sort of reputation of being kind of like lecture-y, maybe a little elitist or whatever. And I agree with that in some respects and don't agree with in other respects, but that's for another show. But I was thinking about like, I don't know if you were paying attention. There's all these like articles and stuff going on about, particularly in Ohio, where our two senators, Bernie Moreno and John Husted, as well as like a whole bunch of other congressional people, like they're not doing town halls They're not going out and talking to people. Like they're like impossible to get a hold of. They're not doing interviews. And so I was like, well, what are some things I could do that would just allow me to go and connect with people? And I was like, streaming just makes sense, right? Like I can be playing a game for an hour or two. People can pop on, chat about stuff. We've had people from all over the world hop on the streams and ask questions. And I just feel like that's a way that I could sort of create this level of accessibility. So one of my goals is to be the most accessible senator in the country, where I am around. You can ask me questions. You know, I might not be able to answer every question or respond to every email or whatever, but I'm going to try to be as accessible as I can be for just being able to talk to people and listen to what's on their mind. So that's kind of what got me started on this. And then Fallout's a very like Americana game, so.
Right. That's a very admirable goal, Chris. And I know we called our senator at one point. Yeah, I couldn't get a hold of him. So that's definitely been our experience. It's like very difficult to get a hold of people. And so I think that's a very admirable goal in the mix all of that.
Well, I'm trying, man. Trying my best. So anyway, I'm an official candidate. I am not soliciting for donations right now. I'm kind of getting all that back end stuff. But interestingly enough, June is my birthday month. So my birthday is June 29th. And I was like, well, maybe I'll do some kind of like kickoff event on my birthday and start taking donations and stuff and just kind of make a fun thing of it. So keep an eye out. Follow us on social media. I will have the website up and running probably next week, and then a email list as well. And so I'll just be reaching out to everybody and letting them know. And then I'll be traveling around the state, chatting with people. So you heard it here first, folks. All right. You ready to dig into this?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So the first thing I think is going to be kind of fun. I didn't even know that this had come out, but speaking of, I will post it in the chat real fast here. There is a tech demo from Unreal for The Witcher 4. So I thought it would be kind of cool to watch that. I have not seen this yet. Have you seen this?
I have not seen this, no.
Okay.
I'll admit I also haven't played any of the games either, which is... I've heard I need to.
Oh, you haven't played any of the Witchers?
I know.
So this got kind of screwy for some reason. There we go.
So it's an overwhelming amount of time.
Yeah, I would
at this point in my life.
Oh, totally. So I would say before we dig into this, I never played 1 or 2, but I played 3 and I really liked it.
That's what I've heard. Play 3.
Yeah, I think 3 does a good enough job of kind of setting the stage. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff like about the kingdoms and the history where like they'd be talking. I was like, I don't know what you people are talking about, but it sounds good. But they even have a little segment slightly into the kind of, it's a little bit past the prologue maybe, where it gives you a chance to kind of like answer questions as if you had been a part of the previous games, and then it uses that information.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So instead of like during your character
a la
creation,
Mass Effect. Yeah.
Yeah. But instead of doing it like during character creation, it kind of does it during this sort of like interview period, which is pretty neat. So I figured let's go ahead and watch this thing. This is a tech demo. So The Witcher, to my understanding, they've moved away from I think it was called the Red Engine into Unreal 4 for The Witcher. So
Unreal 4, interesting.
Or sorry, Unreal 5. 4. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That would make more sense.
The latest version of Unreal for The Witcher 4. Sorry, too many.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and.
The window on the stream is kind of, we're seeing just like the top quarter of it.
Break me pearlies on this blasted pit-ridden tract.
There we go. We're not getting that.
That's wild. So I'm gonna pause it. I'm not actually changing. I'm not actually doing anything.
Funky.
So yeah, maybe this is an OBS thing. Yeah, because according to OBS, it looks fine. Huh. All right, let's try that. See what happens. See if that's any better.
Oh, and you switched and it did the thing again.
That's what it's losing its mind when I'm switching the window. That's what's happening. Okay. So let me just pull this out to here then. Technology.
I also don't think the audio's coming through for it either.
All right, let's try this again. You're not hearing that?
No.
Interesting, because it's definitely... Yeah, it's coming through. It's coming through.
Oh,
interesting.
It's probably coming through on the stream. It's just not coming through. Let me turn the stream on.
Yeah, it's coming through on the stream.
Yeah. That's fine. Ignore. Go. Yes.
All right. I think OBS was having like a resolution issue. So, okay, we're just going to start it over. Here we go.
Sleep, is he? The ploughing plonker. Break me pearlies on this blasted pit-ridden tract. Where's Vierna? Dry road. Oi! The devil's after you! Where's it running from? Maybe I'll have shield us.
Salt. Almost had me fooled, Fruin.
All right. So just a fun little CGI thing there. So I guess the first of all, I just want to watch it because it was cool. But then secondly,
Right.
I think this does open up an interesting conversation about we have seen sort of a change, I think, lately of studios moving away from proprietary internal engines over to Unreal. So I was curious, sort of your thoughts on that. Companies investing in their own tech used to be such a big, important part.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, and you still see a lot of like the tendrils of that and everything, but like, yeah, it's such an interesting world now. The sort of to use a word, the democratization of game development through the availability of various platforms that are, by and large, at least free to use initially, right? So you can use Unity for free, you can use Unreal for free, Godot, etc., other ones. And so just the ability for you to have that kind of power available to you just by a free download to start working on stuff. I mean, that's pretty astonishing because like you'd have to, there was a time not too long in the past when if you wanted to build a game, you kind of had to build your own engine to go along with it, right? And so
yeah, I mean, we're kind of
it's a whole new world.
Yeah, we're kind of a little bit old school. I am now firmly middle aged, which I hate to say, but when we started Multivarious in 2012, I remember having conversations with Unreal and CryEngine to get
CryEngine was expensive.
Yeah, they both were
Holy
expensive.
Moly.
And CryEngine I think wanted like 300,000 for a license, and then Unreal I think was close to $500,000 for a license.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so you just couldn't even get those, even as a business. Like, I'm not gonna spend $500,000 on a license. Like, come on now. And so,
Right.
yeah, that opportunity, as you said, the democratization of these tools it's just a whole different world now. You can
It's a
download,
whole different world.
but before the time this show is done, you could have Unreal downloaded and you're starting a project.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I mean, there's all kinds of conversations about what kinds of tools are available. We have these kind of conversations at COG all of the time, right? People come in and like, which game engine should I use? And it's an interesting conversation. I find that if you kind of know something already, unless your goal is to try to learn a new engine or new technology stack on purpose, generally speaking, if your goal is to make a game, you should use the tool that you know. That's typically what I say. Because if you are getting bogged down in learning a new tool while your goal is to actually make something you want to release, that can often prevent you from getting to that release point, because you just get all of the energy gets sucked out of the room just by doing the learning a new tool. But there are all of these really cool tools. I know a lot of people have moved to Godot, especially after the whole Unity debacle bit. So we got a lot of people at COG using Godot. Unreal Engine is an interesting case because it's so big, and I don't think anybody in any industry knows everything there is to know about Unreal. There's just too much going on. There's too many specializations and focuses and that kind of a thing.
It should be said too that again, back if you rewind like a decade or so, there were many games made in Unreal. Like I think BioShock was made in Unreal, and my God, that's almost like 20 years old now.
I know, right?
I think Gears of War might have been done in Unreal, but
was that proprietary? Maybe it was Unreal.
Yeah, I don't remember, but anyway,
I can't remember.
The point is, even those games, like in that era, when they said they were made in Unreal, really it was like they got the license for the Unreal and like maybe some of the source code, but they added all sorts of ancillary things to Unreal so that it could do the thing they needed it to do for their specific game.
Right.
Unreal now has kind of broadened out its feature set in a big way, so that a lot of those proprietary things that you might have needed to create are, if not a part of Unreal, are at least a little bit easier to implement through third party.
There's tools available for you to try to get that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of remember that when I was in grad school, there was a guy who was working on a game, and he was having to make engine modifications to do that. But I just kind of thinking through what he was trying to do, my suspicion is that you wouldn't necessarily need to modify engine code anymore to accomplish what he was trying to accomplish, which is pretty wild. And I mean, like, Blueprints, as unyieldy as it is a fairly like mature piece of the software at this point, and it really gives a lot of access to people outside of like the programming world. Now I know we got some people at in COG who are really into like the C++ programming within Unreal, and that's fantastic. And basically, with where that interface kind of happens, is it almost turns into the sort of the programmer designer divide. And the programmers create tools, and then those get turned into a blueprint nodes, and then the designers can then use those blueprints to kind of achieve what they're trying to achieve. And so it becomes kind of an interesting divide between kind of the underlying tooling and systems, and then the actual like implementation and design and that sort of a thing. But yeah, Unreal's a big piece of software. It's got a lot of stuff going into it. I mean, you can just completely fall down the well of various aspects of it. But I mean, it is, you see this more and more. I mean, this is an example of it, right? More and more studios are switching to Unreal. And to be fair, like 4 still felt like that kind of older style software interface, and it was a little unyieldy. And they made some astonishing improvements with 5 and 5.1, or what, I don't know if they're up to 5.3 or something. They've made some astonishing improvements to the software between 4 and 5. It's so much more accessible now. There's some really fantastic tutorial content out there. So I mean, it's the kind of thing that I would sort of like cautiously suggest somebody to get into if they're just trying to kind of like solo dev a project, because it's so unyieldy. But people do it 100%, like absolutely.
Yeah,
and it is becoming more of an industry standard. So knowing it not a bad thing if you're trying to look for a role somewhere.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the sort of industry standard / monopoly thing in a second.
Yeah,
but,
good point.
But I do want to talk about that. So I'll pick on programmers here for a second. Programmers, engineers, like they have this tendency. I see this all the time, where it's like they want total control of everything all the time, and sometimes you can see them have a little bit of trouble maybe giving up some of that control when using a tool that's a little bit more like when you're going into the Unreal space or the Unity space, you're sort of locked into the way that system works. Yeah, you can build your workarounds and whatever, but it's not going to work 100% the way that you want it to. And the reality is there's this thing called like the Pareto principle. Applies to a lot of things, but virtually every tool you ever use, it like gets you 80% of the way there, and then you need to figure out the other 20% for your specific, use cases. But I think that's a thing that I've told people too. Like I like use the tool you're familiar with, use the programming language you're familiar with, because at the end of the day, your tools and your processes are supposed to help you execute. And if you spend more time screwing around with fixing the processes or whatever, then that tool's not actually useful, right? Like if you have a hammer and you need to nail a bunch of stuff, but it's like the hammer's, I don't know, whatever this particular hammer doesn't do, you need to work around it to like find a new hammer, right? Like,
and you're speaking to the choir a little bit here. As a programmer, I can get down the tools development for days.
Oh, it's very
I gotta make it perfect. It's gotta be just exactly right,
Yep.
All the time. I will say, as a programmer, as a programmer who is also a designer, there is a line between like a tool that if you make some adjustments to it, it can really improve other workflows.
Yeah.
And there's also an obsession where you can like get into a perfectionist thing where it's got to work just right, but it really doesn't necessarily need to. So, and this is the thing that gets me all the time is building tools out before I've actually tried to build more than one thing and then find out what I actually need for the tooling. So like build all these tools and then I build one thing and then I found out what I actually need is a different tool.
Yeah, I'm a big
there's
fan.
A balance there.
Oh, totally. And it goes back to kind of the old adage of, don't let perfect be the enemy of good,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I'm a big fan. I always tell my students this is like, get stuff down on paper. Like just, sometimes that literally means doing your pre-design on paper and writing things out, because then you'll start to think about what you actually need. Sometimes getting it down on paper means creating simple gray boxes or just, some scenes where you can move around in it. Because you don't think about it. Like I tell my students, like, what is the number one mechanic that almost every game has? Like the number one mechanic you interact with. And people are like, they'll come up with all sorts of things. It's walking. It's movement. Movement is the number one mechanic. And you don't
I was thinking jumping, but you're right.
Yeah,
movement,
jumping.
Yeah.
But it's you're walking, it's your movement. And you don't think about it, but like how you move, the speed at which you move, like the speed at which your character moves determines your level design in a very significant way.
Oh, totally.
And so you look at something like, I always point out Doom Guy from Doom, like somebody calculated out, like, he's running at like 60 miles an hour or something ridiculous, right? But Doom Guy moves really fast compared to most other first-person shooters. Actually, there's a debate going on right now with, was it Doom the Dark Ages, where that's a slower-paced version of Doom. And
interesting.
And there's some people that are pushing back. They're like, this doesn't feel like Doom, But and I can see, both sides of the argument. But the point is, like you were saying, a lot of times you don't even know what you need or the tools you need until you start kind of getting stuff on paper.
Yeah.
Once you start building out those like foundational like infrastructure pieces, you do want to make sure those are as kind of tight as you can, because yeah, when you get 3-6 months, a year down in development, it may not be possible to go back and fix those issues.
Yeah.
You're just too far.
I was recently watching a series of videos that were about kind of this, like, how do you organize from a high level your project flow? And something that I thought was really fascinating was the idea that your first initial stage, if you're in an ideal world, what's the kind of very first initial stage of your development process? You pull off 4 people who are like your best of your best, and they do a game jam for like 2 weeks, and then they test out one idea, two ideas, three ideas, maybe over the course of a month, and you gray box whatever you possibly can to try and like prove out a core idea with the not just the expectation, but like the commitment that whatever you build, you will not use in final production. You will throw it away first.
Yeah.
So you build a gray box, and so just be like, nothing that you make here is allowed to go into the production moment. The production starts again from the beginning and builds everything up really nicely and formatted and everything. Whereas all of your quick gray box stuff, just do whatever possibly can just to prove out an idea as fast as possible. And there's a part of me that's kind of like, who actually gets the privilege of that happening? Like, who actually? Yeah, it feels sort of like that feels a very privileged thing to be able to do as a part of your pipeline. But it's such a cool idea because it's going to, and it's so hard. It's like writing tests and code. Like it's one of those things. Like it takes so much time, but it's an investment that ultimately saves you a lot of time. But you don't feel the savings, right? You invest the time and you feel like it's lost time.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually experience the other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also, you see that sort of sentiment in very large projects where as the size of a team in a project increases, a lot of the efficiencies and savings that might be experienced by a certain pod. So like an engineer may create a system that really saves artists a lot of time, but the engineering team is not going to be fully cognizant of that. And the reverse is also true, where sometimes you can make a design decision, an infrastructure decision that ripples down in a negative way. And when you have that sort of like distributed large team, that's where the producers become really important, so they can relay that information back. Because a lot of times a very simple change can change. The example I always use is Destiny 2, where I don't know if you played Destiny 2 in the very beginning. So in the very beginning, like when it first came out, I played it for a bit. I never played 1, but I played 2 for a while. They had a very big problem where so the inventory system, because it's an RPG, you can get armor and weapons and stuff. The inventory system was based around, I pick up a gun, I have a gun. I pick up a chess piece, I have a chess piece. So the inventory system just assumed this like 1-to-1 ratio, right, of item in inventory to thing. Well, if you wanted to change your design, you could change the coloring and stuff of your armor and your weapons. You would collect these things. I think they were called shards. You might have like a blue shard or a red shard or whatever. There's like a bazillion colors. They would stack in your inventory. So you might have like a 40 blue shards, right? And then you could apply them, because it would use up the shard when you applied the color to the armor.
Right.
And you're like, okay, that's kind of standard inventory stuff, right? The problem was when you went to go get rid of them from your inventory, when you went to go sell them, because the system only understood I'm going to sell you this gun, you are going to give me these resources for this gun, right? So when you had a stack of like 40 items, you would have to sell them individually. So you would be like, sell blue shard. Sure, you sell blue shard. You would hold down X.
Oh, that hurts.
It would do that it would do that like 3-second confirmation window, and then it would sell it. So you would have to be like, sell blue shard. Are you sure? Yes. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Sold. Sell blue shard. Are you sure? Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Because it has to verify it on the back end every single time.
And so you would have to do that 40 times or 50 times to get rid of this thing out of your inventory. And I bet somewhere along the line, there was a QA person or a designer or somebody that was like, guys, this is a problem. We have to fix this. And they were probably like, shit, we are too far along to do this. So we'll just release it. Because when it was a big, like tons of people had an issue with it when the game came out, it took them like 2 or 3 months to release a patch to fix it, which tells me that was some sort of like really built-in part of their inventory system that they had to like untangle and then rebuild. It wasn't a quick fix, right? And so then after a while, you could sell them as the full stack if you wanted to get rid of them. But little things like that, you kind of don't always think about until you're in it. To your point, most companies, like when we do client work, for example, and we do like a game or an app or a website, we have a very small pre-production window, very small design window. And usually we have to go through it and then they sign off on it and then we build it. Right. And
Right.
if we discover major issues along the way, we have to implement a change request or a feature enhancement request. Right. And it's totally possible they may not have the time or the budget to do that.
Right.
And we're just like, well, shit, here we are. And we just build what we can. And as a side note, this is one of the reasons I'm very interested in Grand Theft Auto 6, because if any game company, I mean, they've been working on GTA 6 for over a decade, right? So if any game company has the time to really think through their pre-design process and work on their various tools, it's Rockstar. So I'm very curious just to see how's the game going to function? What quality of life improvements have been implemented that, only Rockstar could do, right?
Dude, I've been thinking this whole time about we talk about pre-production and all of that. I'm just like, man, I just can't imagine the monumental lift that it would take to organize a team of, over 1,000 people trying to you think about some of the Ubisoft stuff where they have sites all over the world. And so they're all trying to organize and collaborate, and this team's contributing this piece. And I'm thinking about, I've been on a team of 30 people working out of the same Perforce, and it's just sort of that can get tricky sometimes, or just various merges and things. And
well,
how do you do a merge reconciliation with a team of 1,000 people?
Oh, sure. I mean, remember when we worked together on that AAA expansion project, and even things like language barriers come into play, time zones come into play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, holidays. We would work with some people overseas that would be it seemed like every other week there was a holiday, and over here, us schmucks in America, we're not getting any holidays. And so all of those things you kind of have to navigate, and there's cultural differences that extend beyond the language barriers, just the way you speak to people, Eastern Europe, for example, tends to be very blunt in their conversation. And so, there's a lot of different things. I'm curious too, just as we're getting a little tight on time, it seems like Unreal has been very effective at sort of coming out against Unity. And I will say that Unity has been a great sponsor of GDEX for a long time. It seems like internally they have had a very big culture shift. They're getting back to community-focused work, which is great. But what thoughts or concerns do you have about, it's nice when there's an industry standard, but then also you get into monopoly territory. You look at stuff like Maya, right? Maya's industry standard, and there's issues that a lot of people have with Autodesk and how they handle things on a business perspective. For sure.
Yeah, So, full disclosure, I'm very much more of a Unity person. Some of that is just because of when I came into the game development world, Unity was kind of the one that was that free and open source, or not open source, but free to use thing. So that's kind of where I got my feet wet after I finished up using GameMaker 8. So Unity, I have a long history with Unity. It's still the one that I use. It's the one I'm using professionally today. So my job at Oxstar Reading, we are using Unity. I also just really love C# as a programming language. It's a language that I think really nailed a lot of the things that I find really valuable in a programming language. That's an aside. But with Unreal Engine becoming kind of more and more its own thing, I think the idea of there being an industry standard has pros and cons. I think having an in-house proprietary system is beneficial because you could tune it to what you want specifically. And this has worked out really well for some people. It's worked out very well for Nintendo. It's worked out very well for Helldivers 2 Arrowhead. The studios has their kind of own. It was technically a third party, but then now they're the only ones who use it, and so it's kind of theirs now. There's ways that you can optimize systems. I mean, there's no way that Nintendo could have built Breath of the Wild in Unreal Engine and have had it optimized within an inch of its life on the Switch like they
Sure.
did. Same thing with Tears of the Kingdom. Like Tears of the Kingdom absolutely shouldn't work on that hardware, and it does, and it's mind-boggling. You could not achieve that kind of fidelity just using an engine like Unreal that's got all of this other stuff going on with it. So there are distinct advantages to using something in-house, especially if you're thinking about the connectivity with a specific set of hardware. But it's always a concern when monopolies crop up, because the consumer always loses, right? For that in every industry, in every situation. But what I love about where we are in the game industry right now is that even with Unreal kind of taking a lot of the market share, with Unity kind of licking its wounds and trying to like, no, sorry guys, we're better now.
Yeah, they made a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. But yeah.
They really tanked themselves. They were in a great spot before that, but then maybe they weren't actually. Maybe it was the crumbling tower that was actually crumbling to begin with. But the fact that Godot came onto the scene, I think, gives me a lot of hope, because it's the same kind of effect as you were talking about with Maya, with Autodesk and Blender coming onto the scene, right? And so you have an option that is actually really good, that is available for people who want to get into an ecosystem that is not the walled garden experiences of something like an Unreal or even a Unity. And so because Unreal and Unity, they're not making their money off of little indie games at all. Basically, they're making their money off of the big enterprise stuff, or the random lethal companies that sell a bajillion copies or whatever that they have to suddenly pay Unity money for. They get money from those sorts of things, and then on top of that is their services, right? So like Cloud Sync and Save, and like the relay servers and that sort of thing, and multiplayer servers, dedicated stuff. Yeah. So that's how they're making their money, is all of that stuff. So they want you as a small developer to get into the ecosystem, because the bigger their ecosystem is, then the more they get those big ones, whales, honestly, right? There's the same kind of thing as like in mobile, so they get their whales, and that's how they make their money. And so Fortnite notwithstanding.
See, that's the thing I was going to mention when you talk about Unreal versus Unity. It's not a true kind of apples to apples thing, because Epic has like this cash stream in other games, in particular Fortnite, where they can afford to take the loss on developing Unreal, because they have another mechanism. Unity doesn't have that option.
That's correct. That's correct.
So that is something to keep in mind. I got this new camera. I'm so shiny. I don't know if that's good. I gotta work on that. But yeah, no, totally. I think that industry standard, like creating, I always say, like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like game development's hard enough in that the technology is constantly changing, so we're always having to adapt and learn new things, without having to completely start from scratch every time. Even though a lot of times it seems like we're starting from scratch sometimes when we're working on stuff, but it's a very intriguing situation.
Here's another thing I want to throw out there too, is that so with the different engines, like, yes, there's a learning curve to learning a new engine, but also on top of that, every single game, unless it's like an in-house studio that has a pipeline like that's already built, every single game you go to work on is basically going to be using that engine in a somewhat slightly different way. And so almost more work than learning the engine is learning how is this particular project using the engine in these particular ways. And so knowing the standard is really helpful, or knowing if it's a Unity shop and you know Unity, or if it's an Unreal shop and you know Unreal, knowing those ahead of time is very helpful. But there's this whole extra learning curve of actually learning how that specific project is working out. Totally. And the other thing that's been really interesting, and I feel like this is more true over the last 5 years or so, if you go back and you look at Unreal 3 or 4, and you look at Unity 5 or whatever, they don't look anything like each other. If you look at Unity 6 today and you look at Unreal Engine 5 today, they look a lot more similar to one another.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a common design scheme where things are kind of, they're not the same, they're definitely not the same, but the general design and layout of where you find things and some of the vernacular starts to overlap, and there's actually less of a barrier between switching between the two of them, at least from a sort of like UI visual perspective. They've started to look a lot more like each other. Now, you never mistake one for the other, but they're a lot more similar than they used to be, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that's really intriguing. I think we've seen sort of a confluence of a lot of, graphics. I think a lot of games look kind of similar today, and a lot of that has to do with like the way the rendering is done, and then all sorts of like you talk about things like bit mapping, all sorts of like meshing. Like we're in a whole other world than we were a decade ago on a lot of this stuff, right?
Oh, totally.
And then of course we have the higher end things like ray tracing and path tracing, like all that stuff is becoming a bigger part of the scene. And so I think when for what it's worth, yeah. But I think we're starting to see. I guess it's not really a worry I have. I just love how there's such a variety of creative artistic decisions that go into the visualization of games that I want to make sure that the tools don't just inherently start restricting us, or at least the default becomes that everything kind of looks a little bit samey, And
you do see that because like if you go and play like some of your kind of AA or like more lower level, or I guess higher band indie titles that are using Unreal, you usually can go like, that one's using Unreal because there's a look to Unreal. The default stock renderer, there's a look to it. And you can kind of start, no, that one's made in Unreal, that one's made in Unreal. You kind of get a feel for the FOV or like how the different like render elements are working. I feel, in my experience, like Unity has this absolutely, but it seems like it tends to be that games made in Unity are a little bit more on the stylized end of things, which makes it a little bit harder to tell that it's using the stock Unity renderer. But Unreal has a very pronounced.
If I had to put money on it,
stock renderer.
Yeah, if I had to put money onto it, I think it's really just a reflection of Unity kind of growing up from the grassroots indie side of games, and Unreal was the predominant AAA engine. And so I think there's, kind of, when you're going AAA, not all the times, but a lot of times you are going for like that higher fidelity. Maybe you're moving into photorealism kind of thing. Whereas the indie side has a much broader perspective of what visuals you're going for and whatever.
And certainly you can get very stylized stuff in Unreal, and you can get very high fidelity stuff in Unity.
Absolutely.
And so it's I think we do a disservice to say that Unreal is where you do your high fidelity stuff and Unity was where you do your like quirky stylized indie stuff.
Yeah.
It just happens to be that a lot of the games made through those tend towards those two. Not that the engines themselves are that way.
Yeah, this goes back to your point where the two engines have sort of like matured along the same lines in a lot of ways. So if you look at where they started, again, we're talking about over 10 years ago now, which in video game world is like, that's insane, right?
Forever. Yeah.
So when you talk about the old, I remember when it was, Unity 3.2 or whatever, and like, it was a clunky mess. It was just a different world back then. And so the tools were doing different things. They were designed to do different things. People forget, like when the Unreal Engine came out for free, it was also, I don't want to say it was a disaster. I think that's a little harsh, but it was messy. Like there was no real good documentation on a lot of this stuff, because when Unreal or Epic was licensing out Unreal to, BioWare or whoever, they're just like, here's the tools. Then those AAA teams would already have like their internal knowledge on what to do. But when you release something to like everyone in the world, you need to start building documentation so that small teams would even know what the hell they're looking at.
Well, you'd like to think that, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And it took a long time for Epic to get any kind of like really meaningful documentation and tutorials and things like that, because that's not what their business practice was. as a licensing thing. So before we roll, I want to. This is kind of a fun little story. I don't know if you are aware of Hypercharge. Have you heard of that game?
I am not sure.
So I'm going to show here. This is an article on Polygon from Patricia Hernandez. So the title is PS5 shooter goes from 5 players to bestseller after devs defend game. And so I'd never heard of Hypercharge either. It's a whimsical action sort of figure shooter. It's a first person shooter. And they didn't have like it's been out for a little bit, didn't really have a big audience. And I guess they were getting a lot of flack for the online component. It was like impossible to find people and to get games going and things like that. And they kind of released this little thing. It says, to be honest, it's been surreal. Johansson, head of marketing for Hypercharge, told Polygon, we are a team of 5 with no publisher, no outside funding, no big marketing budget, just 5 friends who grew up loving games and wanted to make one that meant something to us. To see Hypercharge go viral, now stand alongside major AAA titles as the number 5 best-selling new release on PlayStation is something we never anticipated. It's genuinely touched us. But I want to read this thing. This is in response to the sort of negative criticism.
Is this the one where you are an action figure?
I guess. I'm not 100% sure. I'm actually I'm going to look it up. I didn't have time to look it up before the show here. But
go ahead. Sorry.
Because I was sort of scanning through it. This is the statement that I really kind of liked. Again, this is in response to the flack about the online component. I completely understand it can be frustrating if you're trying to jump into online matches and you can't find anyone, Henson said. I hear that, but I don't think it's fair to call a game a failure when it's doing exactly what it set out to do, offer a solid offline and local co-op experience with online as a nice extra, not the main focus. So I was curious about your thoughts on that, where, you got this small team creating this, in essence, this indie game where their focus, their design philosophy was about being next to someone on the couch, playing the game. That's a part of the experience. But they added in online play as kind of like this extra nice to have. But that has ended up becoming kind of the negative that has hit them. But it seems like after kind of coming up and defending the game, that people really grooved on that response.
Yeah, man. I'm a really big fan of playing games together in the same space. It's one of the reasons I love GDUX, plug for GDUX, because there is something about being in the same space with other people and enjoying that just physical interaction and the subtle elements of body language and just everything. Like, and I know that there are people in our community who really love this too. Like, what's that? Mage Quit?
Mage Quit? Mm-hmm.
That's a big like local co-op game. Now I say this as a person who plays online video games with my friends once a week and have done that for almost a decade now. And so like I play online all the time, but there is something really special about that in-person setting. And I think it's really easy. It's almost easier to design your game for the online than if you're going to do like a multiplayer setting. It's almost easier to design it for that online experience than to try to figure out, well, how do we do split screen and how do we like figure out different controller inputs into the same system? And like, I'm not saying it necessarily is easier, but there are a bunch of decisions that you then have to make about how you're going to set up your system to allow for it. And, I mean, when's the last time you had a game legitimately designed for you to do like a LAN party with, right? Like in the same building, which used to be a thing that we did all the time in college. Age of Empires and all of that, StarCraft. And so I think there is something really special about games that are designed with that in mind, to like be in the same space. And I'm even going to say, like, there's a lot of as you have said many times this talk, like so many technological advancements over the last decade or more. And I wonder if maybe there is room for innovation in the local co-op space using some of the new tools and techniques that we have now to create something really interesting. So instead of just like your 4-player, split screen kind of experience, what's something, well, here's a great example of it, I think, is Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time.
I was gonna say It Takes Two is another example of those.
Yeah. So like a game where everybody kind of is in the same space, but the same space is now localized, but also not localized because just your ship is moving around, but you are like inside the ship, and so the ship's always in view. And so it's like different ideas, quirks, ways that you could kind of like make that local player experience kind of more interesting and fun, and have different dynamics to it and that sort of thing.
Totally.
Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but I do think that there's room for innovation there, and I'd love to see more of it.
I agree. I am very curious to see. I see this when I'm out there talking to people or maybe doing some of my campaign stuff. There's a noticeable feeling where people want to get back to being next to each other and personal situation. Even the first, the Fallout 4 stream I've been doing, I started that, kind of tested it out for a little bit, and then I actually restarted it, and deleted the videos and restarted it. And I had Yua come over. And so the first episode that I have posted on YouTube, his sound isn't great, which kind of saddens me, but having somebody sitting next to the couch, like sitting next to me on the couch, talking and asking me questions, I felt it was a much more interesting and fulfilling experience than me playing the game and responding to people talking on the chat.
Yeah.
And there was nothing wrong with the talking on the chat, and I want to be accessible for people to be able to jump on chat and ask me questions, but just having somebody next to me where we could kind of kick ideas back and forth,
absolutely,
or whatever, or I could pause the game real fast and respond to him in some way. I just felt it just really opened up the conversation, and so I've started thinking about it. I might start inviting more people over to my apartment to do those streams so they can sit next to me and ask me questions and we can chat. For me, it felt like a much more sort of fulfilling conversation.
Yeah.
And
I love doing streams with my wife for the same reason, because we have that back and forth and that dynamic of like, especially if I'm playing a game, I can like focus for a minute and she can kind of chat about something, and then so we can kind of like have that back and forth. Yeah,
that's the funny. Like the first episode that we did with Yua, probably 80% of it was me just bumbling around the first town sanctuary, like cleaning it up and doing stuff. I didn't really like do much, but it gave me an opportunity to like be active in the game while still talking to him and not have my like concentration. Like I wasn't worried about getting like, surprised by raiders or something. Right. We were just able to kind of like have a conversation. And I really enjoyed it. And I think that, like you said, I think there's room in the game space for that more next to couch co-op, whatever personal experience. So yeah, I just want to bring that up and kind of as just sort of a positive. I think we tend to breathe heavy a lot when we're talking about the games industry these days, but I just thought that story was a pretty cool story where
that is really cool. I like that.
Yeah, a group of people just made games and like they created the experience they wanted, and they realized that maybe the online part of it wasn't the core of what they were trying to do. But now it's exploded, and I wonder if the online aspects of it are now more in line with the couch co-op-y part of it. But sweet, man. Well, I think that's a good time for us to stop here. Is there anything else you want to mention? Any way that people can get a hold of you or follow you on anything?
Yeah, definitely come over, check out the COG Discord. I'm over there chatting a lot. I have used social media less and less over the years, and so I don't have much of a presence to follow there. But here's one thing I will plug though. I'm actually part of a game narrative podcast called Pages of Play. We release a couple times a month, depending on our availability. It's three dads, so we don't always have the most availability. But what we do is we play through games, often very indie games, probably sometimes ones that you haven't heard of before. We play through them and we would take questions. This is a book club style podcast where basically people send in questions and then we discuss them, kind of about the narrative. So we've done some really cool ones. We're going to record our episode on Wanderstop this week, which we're really excited about. That was a super cool game. Check out Pages of Play podcast.
Sweet. Well, there you go. Thank you, Caleb. Well, that's been episode 67 of the Sandbox.Space Weekly Podcast. Reminder, we do this every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the twitch.tv/the GDEX. We also post these videos to the GDEX YouTube, or actually, I take that back. I've moved the videos over to the Sandbox.Space's own account. So we post those on there so you can find them on YouTube. A reminder about GDEX, www.thegdex.com. We're 90 days out. Now's the time to get in. So hopefully we'll see you there. And then, of course, thecog, COGG.com is another great community environment to come hang out. Even if you're not a game developer and you just like the process or want to know more about developing and creating games, it's a great community, great people like Caleb there. But yeah, that has been episode 67. So thank you all so much for watching. On behalf of myself, Chris, our special guest, Caleb, Baby Girl, and Pumpkin, who are both over there sleeping, I want to thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.
Cheers.